For decades, Toys R Us defined childhood itself. It shaped how generations discovered imagination, desire, and reward. Its scale was unmatched, its presence unquestioned, its dominance assumed to be permanent. To walk through its doors was to step into a world built entirely around wonder. But even the most familiar giants exist within systems that change without warning. Markets evolve. Habits shift. Certainty erodes. What once felt untouchable can quietly become vulnerable. This is not a story of toys. It is a story of power, legacy, and disappearance. Welcome to Corporate Collapse. For generations, this company was not just a shop, but a destination, a promise, and a childhood ritual that felt as permanent as growing up itself. Until one day, it stood as a symbol of how even the most dominant empires can be brought to the edge of disappearance. Toys R Us began with a simple idea shaped by post-war optimism and the explosive growth of American families. Its founder, Charles Lazarus, was a young entrepreneur who initially sold baby furniture, believing that supporting new parents would offer steady demand in a booming economy. He soon noticed something unexpected, as customers kept returning not just for cribs and prams, but for toys, games, and anything that brought joy to children. Lazarus realized that toys were not seasonal novelties, but emotional products tied to birthdays, holidays, and family identity. In the late 1940s, he shifted his focus entirely, laying the foundation for a business built on scale, variety, and affordability. The early stores were modest, but the concept behind them was revolutionary. Instead of small neighborhood toy shops with limited stock, Toys R Us would offer vast spaces filled wall to wall with choice. Customers were no longer browsing, they were exploring. This warehouse-style approach allowed the company to negotiate aggressively with manufacturers, pushing prices down while increasing margins through volume. By the 1960s, the brand had refined its model, pairing low prices with a sense of wonder that felt unmatched in retail. As suburban expansion accelerated, Toys R Us expanded with it. New locations appeared near shopping centers and highways, designed to attract families willing to drive for selection and savings. The company invested heavily in logistics and distribution, ensuring that shelves were stocked with the latest trends and timeless classics alike. Children came to associate the brand with abundance, while parents trusted it as the default destination for birthdays and holidays. By the 1980s and 1990s, Toys R Us was no longer just a retailer. It was the global authority on toys. At its peak, the company operated hundreds of large-format stores across multiple continents. Its mascot, Geoffrey the giraffe, became instantly recognizable, reinforcing the brand's identity as friendly, playful, and reliable. Manufacturers depended on Toys R Us for exposure, often tailoring products specifically for its shelves. Competitors struggled to match its buying power or its sheer physical presence. For a time, it seemed unthinkable that any serious challenge could threaten its dominance. Yet, beneath this apparent stability, subtle pressures were beginning to form. Retail was changing, shaped by shifting consumer expectations and the early rise of digital commerce. Shoppers were becoming more price-conscious and increasingly comfortable with convenience over experience. At the same time, big-box competitors began selling toys as loss leaders, undercutting margins to drive traffic to their own stores. The foundations of Toys R Us remained strong, but the ground beneath them was quietly shifting. The company responded by doubling down on what had always worked. Its stores remained large, inventory-heavy, and costly to maintain. While online retail was still in its early stages, it represented a change in behavior that Toys R Us was slow to prioritize. An early partnership with Amazon outsourced much of its digital presence, limiting its ability to learn and adapt internally. What appeared to be a shortcut would later prove to be a missed opportunity. A far more significant turning point arrived through changes in ownership. In the mid-2000s, Toys R Us was acquired through a leveraged buyout by private equity firms, fundamentally altering its financial structure. The deal placed billions of dollars of debt onto the company's balance sheet, immediately constraining its flexibility. Cash that might have been used for innovation, store modernization, or technology upgrades was redirected toward interest payments. The business continued to operate, but with far less room for error. As the years passed, competition intensified. Online retailers offered endless choice without physical overhead, while traditional rivals adapted more quickly to omnichannel strategies. Toys R Us stores, once symbols of excitement, began to feel dated and crowded. Customers noticed narrower aisles, slower checkouts, and fewer reasons to linger. The emotional bond that had defined the brand began to weaken, replaced by convenience-driven alternatives. Economic shocks further exposed the company's vulnerability. The global financial crisis reduced discretionary spending, directly impacting toy sales. With heavy debt and thin margins, Toys R Us lacked the resilience to absorb prolonged downturns. Store closures followed by layoffs, each step eroding confidence among suppliers, employees, and customers alike. The brand was still recognizable, but its momentum had stalled. In 2017, the pressure reached a breaking point. Toys R Us filed for bankruptcy protection, seeking to restructure its obligations while keeping stores open. For many, the announcement felt surreal, as a brand woven into childhood memories suddenly appeared fragile. Despite attempts to reorganize, the burden proved too heavy. By 2018, the company began liquidating its U.S. operations, closing hundreds of stores and ending an era in American retail. The closures had a profound impact. Tens of thousands of employees lost their jobs. Shopping centers lost a major anchor tenant. Parents and children alike experienced a rare moment of collective nostalgia, as familiar storefronts disappeared almost overnight. What had once seemed permanent vanished with startling speed. Yet the story did not end there. Outside the United States, certain international operations continued under different ownership structures. The brand itself retained enormous recognition and emotional value. New investors saw potential not in recreating the past, but in reshaping the future. Toys R Us would not return as it once was, but it would not vanish entirely. In the years that followed, the company re-emerged in a far smaller and more cautious form. New stores focused on experience rather than scale, integrating play areas and interactive elements. Partnerships replaced ownership, allowing Toys R Us to exist within other retail ecosystems rather than standing alone. Online channels were rebuilt with greater emphasis, reflecting lessons learned too late in its earlier incarnation. The brand survived, but in a quieter, humbler state. Today, Toys R Us exists as a shadow of its former self, yet still carries immense symbolic weight. It no longer dominates the toy industry, nor does it define how children discover play. Instead, it stands as a reminder of how scale, success, and familiarity can create both strength and vulnerability. Its name still evokes wonder, but also caution. The story of Toys R Us is not simply about failure, but about transformation under pressure. From a small baby furniture shop to a global retail giant, and then to a brand fighting for relevance, its journey mirrors the evolution of modern commerce itself. It rose by understanding families better than anyone else. It fell by struggling to adapt as the world around it changed faster than its foundations allowed. And it endures today, reshaped by necessity rather than ambition. In that survival lies both its legacy and its unfinished story. The fall of a giant is rarely sudden. It unfolds slowly, often unnoticed, while the world moves on. What once felt essential becomes optional. What once defined an era becomes a memory. Brands do not vanish when doors close, but when relevance fades. Yet echoes remain, carried by nostalgia and shared experience. They remind us that dominance is temporary, and familiarity offers no immunity from change. In the end, what survives is not scale or reach, but the impression left behind. Some companies shape markets, others shape generations, and a few do both before time moves past them. This was corporate collapse.